Hi, and welcome to Rest Room, the first conversation in a series of 4 conversations that are going to happen in the frame of Recover, the first chapter of The Rest of the Struggle, happening as part of the SPIELART Festival 2021. Today, I'm going to be speaking with dancer, choreographer, and yoga teacher Navtej Johar, who has been leading the yoga sessions that happen at 8 in the morning Central European time and 11:30 in the morning India time since Friday. If you haven't already joined these sessions, there's a registration link in the chat box. Please do join them. These sessions are free and will carry on till the 6th of November. If you have, the chat box is open for all your comments and questions to keep happening through our conversation. Navtej and I are going to speak with each other for about 30 to 40 minutes, after which we'll throw it open to questions. But please do keep posting your questions through the chat as they occur to you, and we'll take them up towards the end of the session. Welcome, Navtej.
Hi, thank you, Mallika.
Thank you very much for joining the talk, and also for the very detailed and beautifully gentle sessions that have been happening. They have had such a robust participation. It's been very encouraging. As someone who's done your classes and engaged with the conversation that you are trying to have about yoga, the first thing that I was struck by when I joined the classes during the pandemic last year was this stress on sukh, that is pleasure and repose. And having kind of been through different yoga classes, different body-based practices, I found that actually sukh is entirely missing from the conversation, from the doing. And I thought we could start by, firstly, if you could reflect a little bit upon what made you go down this path, what kind of told you that this is the way to go with your practice, and why?
Okay, so first of all, before I go into why, because the why is not going to be that easy, because it's like, I don't have a reason as to why, but I'll kind of try to kind of create a context within which this why happened. But before that, let me just also explain what sukh means, because there might be some people who are not familiar with the word, and even the ones who are familiar with the word, they might be interested to understand or know the etymology of the word. So the word is sukh, or some call it sukha, but it's actually sukha. And it's a Sanskrit word. And the two phonemes that make up the word are su and kha. And kha means space, just space. And su is one of those words that is kind of difficult to translate, because su, it has been translated as good or auspicious and stuff like that. But su means just right. It's like just right. Like I feel that, when we see these images of the Buddha whose hands are in this position and they're just above the fingertips, are just put to touch. It's that just right. So it is that just right space of su and a sukh. Sukh is the just right space. And to my mind, it implies an uncluttered space, an unhurried space, an undriven, and a space where you're not being driven, so to speak. Nobody's riding you, not even yourself, or time for that matter. So that is sukh. And what brought me to it? I would just I'll try to kind of lay bare a few things that happened, which I suspect led me to this. I had been teaching yoga for a good 25, 30 years. And you also have to realize that practices like yoga and other, so to speak, classical or traditional practices, it's the pedagogy itself all kind of makes you very deferential. You are deferential to your teachers, you're deferential to the tradition, because it seems like like larger than life. It seems large, so you don't quite know even how to enter it, or how to challenge it, or how to question it, and you just kind of rely on received knowledge, so to speak. You are being given received knowledge, and you don't quite, because of a differential disposition or status, even as a student, you don't question it. So this is a time when my teacher, Desikachar, who was in his own way non-reverential, because according to him, his brand of yoga was yoga without God. And when we say God, we don't say that he's a non-believer. We are silent about belief. But he did not, he wanted to do yoga without God. And that's how he taught it. So this is the time about 10 years ago when Desikachar sir, as we called him, had fallen ill, and he was on his way out, so to speak. So I was at the cusp of losing a teacher whom I hadn't asked many questions because out of deference. And these questions were not even articulated in my body or mind. At the same time, I hosted a teachers training program in my studio, and I was not fully satisfied with this teachers training program, the way they were teaching yoga, because I felt it was kind of getting little God leaning, so to speak. About the same time, I had a falling out with a student, and that's the only falling out I've had with a student. So I was kind of even doubting this whole thing about what is this thing about teaching, and students who ostensibly at this point I felt were insincere or using me and stuff like that. And so there was something that was kind of making me less and less enthusiastic about yoga and teaching. And around the same time, of course, I continued teaching because I had lots of other students who loved me and whom I adored. And there came a time, I remember a distinct moment, that I knew that the practice that I had received from my teacher and the practice that I was teaching was programmed to orchestrate Sukh. That I could promise you that, the practice that we teach or that I've learned, by the end of it, you feel lovely, for lack of a better word. You just feel lovely. And I remember that, I had taught a beautiful class, and I knew that these people would be, these people lying in front of me on the mats should be, I thought, swimming in pleasure and sukh and loveliness and lightness. And suddenly out of that, one woman jolted and got up, and she says, I have to go. I have things to do. And it was like a shock to me. I thought she got up, she spat on the mat, and she left. That's the image that I have in my head. And I realized that, at that point, I realized that it is not easy for people to accept this sense of ease. They don't allow themselves to immerse. Like, immersion is something that they don't get permission for, and they don't allow permission for. And I realized at that point that immersion or sukh required permission. And then I started to look at all the factors that take permission away from us. And by God, if you start looking at everything, all the conditionings that we've inherited, which methodically, one by one, rob us of permission, it gets kind of overwhelming. And so I think that was a turning point. So I realized I continued to teach, but I got totally disinterested in teaching the way I was teaching. And for 2 or 3 years, I hardly made them do anything. Like, I lost many students because my classes became super simple, super easy. They all were kind of delving into this, into sukh. And the question that I used to ask at that point was, okay, I bring you till this point. Now, where do we go from here? Where do we go from the place of sukha? Is that the end? Is that something, is it a feel-good experience? Is that all? So I think all these things led to my getting disinterested in what is conventional yoga, my disinterest in being the kind of teacher that I was, and my interest in really inquiring into the practice and the promise of this practice and the possibilities of the practice, and more than anything else, the politics of this practice. That because it is a political move that robs me of my ability to permit myself. So it was, I was always political, but I think about 8 or 10 years ago, I became fiercely political in my yoga practice.
It's an interesting word to use with yoga, political, because everywhere, I mean, I'm in Europe right now, I'm walking the streets, and here you see beautiful yoga, delight yoga, peace yoga, and the entire, even back home, a lot of the conversation around it is so uh, apparently apolitical. Like it kind of actively distances itself from politics as if it is above it or it is not involved in the day to day living of the world that we live in. And uh, this is also my draw towards the practice of studio abhyas, because uh, it does not silence the political inside me. In fact, it asks me to embrace it. Um, and it is also therefore different in how it relates to my own relationship to my body. I Yeah, sorry,
I
go
just
on.
want to add one more thing here. I think one major factor that I forgot was I'm also a dancer, and dance has been grossly manipulated and fabricated. The history, the narrative of dance. And when I realized that the narrative of yoga was ditto, it was the reconstruction of yoga is um, as made up, sort of constructed. It's a construct, and it's a construct which is less like about a century old. When I realized that both yoga and dance had a very similar history of coercion, I think that's when I really kind of got the courage and the guts to challenge it, because as long as I was just dealing with dance, I didn't have the courage to challenge it, because I felt like really an oddball out. But when I saw both dance and yoga, the same thing happening, I realized there was a pattern here, and that pattern had to be called. It was a bluff that had to be called. So that was also one big factor, which I forgot. And of course, and both those are, I mean, as we see, dance more than yoga, and yoga has become a national construct, or is a national construct. So it is already political. It has been politicized. It has been used for political gain, for the idea of India, for the image of India. So that's all these, India, the spiritual destination, India, the non-violent, and all these, of course, ideas which are anything but the truth. So, yeah.
And actually, in this kind of a scenario, and especially in the India that we all find ourselves in today, it is so important to say, no, my breath is political. The fact my inhale and my exhale is political. And I think the pandemic has especially brought this into relief, in such sharp relief, in such a crucial, felt bodily way, that it's difficult to say anymore that my body is not a political being in the world that we are living in. I wanted to just ask, when you made this shift and made your yoga simple and easy, did it mean different people walked into it, different bodies started to occupy it?
Totally. I lost a whole population of my students, and I was very happy to lose them, actually. No offense here. I love my students dearly, even the first generation, but it's a whole different breed. And in fact, the first generation can't quite relate to what I'm doing now. So it's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different language. It's a whole different, and the people who are coming today are mostly all political. and creative in very, very interesting ways. I mean, in very out of the box ways.
This permission that you are talking about, this permission for immersion, could you speak a little bit more about?
You see, I mean, if I just talk to, like, if I just retrace my words, like the first generation of my yoga students and this generation, I think the first generation of my yoga students, I would say, were, for lack of a better word, they are nice, well-adjusted, middle-class people. And they can only allow themselves to do middle-class yoga which is domesticated. So I call it middle-class yoga. So, but this yoga is transgressive. It is not middle-class, neither is it tame, nor is it domesticated. It is transgressive. So, so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but there is this whole thing of, I mean, yoga has been domesticated. That's the whole politics of it. It has been, the body has been domesticated, and the embodied practices have been doubly domesticated. So the way they have advocated and valorized and embellished and marketed yoga is all the sweet nothings. It's full of sweet nothings. So I'm sorry, I think I've lost your question. But I
was speaking about permission and
permission.
This permission.
Yeah. So within middle class mindset, permission is a bad word. It is middle class because there is no permission. There is control. There is it's. I mean, the status quo is the most important thing, and status quo does not allow you permission. It is people. It is. You see, what happens is that I'll just kind of go into it another way. That if I start getting sukh, a dose of sukh every day through my practice, if I get even unwittingly, I'm getting this dose of feeling really good and wholesome, and I begin to own my body, even for a little bit, but I get a dose of it every day. There comes a time when I begin to expect it. There comes a time when I begin to command it. There comes a time when I begin to demand it. And when I come to know that this sukh is my embodied right, and I am not only permitted to, but it is my right to feel good in my body. So so automatically it gives you the courage and the clarity and the boldness to demand and to allow yourself. So permission is something that I feel comes in little doses, and it comes in doses of experience that is satisfying, that is grounding, that is real, that makes you feel real. And there comes a time that, you know, that sense of reality is palpable, that if it feels so good and it feels so right, it cannot be wrong, even if you say so. Really, it comes to that it feels so good and it feels so right, and it feels just not just right, but just right, then it cannot be wrong. And I goddamn will demand it. I will permit myself, and I will challenge if you try to make me doubt this. So permission and doubt and control, I think they're all mixed up, because we are and good people doubt themselves. Nice middle-class people are always in doubt. They don't quite know if they have the right thing, because the guy next door always knows it slightly better or has made it slightly better. So there is this thing of, you know, self-doubt, or being cocky, of course, being overconfident. But permission is a different thing altogether, and it comes in doses. It doesn't come overnight. And it comes out of a consistent dose of that experience.
This feeling that you're saying that comes in doses, this experience, what sometimes becomes difficult in doing something that comes in small doses, while I totally appreciate, is that it's very difficult to hold on to that little dose. And it
That's what I
kind of,
was saying, that if it comes in doses, like but there's a time, if it keeps coming in small doses and it's consistent, you might not be able to hold on to it, but you might begin to expect it, and you might even begin to demand it, even though you can't hold it. And you can definitely have that clarity that this cannot be wrong, this cannot be immoral, because the message that we get is, the message that all of us are getting all across the world in different cultures and different religions is that the body is a dangerous thing. The body is immoral. The body is inherently immoral, and it will waylay you. So beware the body. And when you begin to realize that the body, the sensitivity and the subtlety and the satisfaction that you're gaining out of your own body, which feels so right, cannot be immoral. It is not waylaying you, it is kind of absorbing you, it is making you, it's giving you integrity. So that means you are standing on homegrown truths and facts that you have tested upon and within your body. And nobody can make you question them, because these are homegrown truths. These are not received truths. Practice gives me insights and experiences which are mine forever. Nobody can make me doubt them, because they're homegrown. I know it firsthand. It feels very right. It cannot be wrong. I'm sorry. You got it wrong. So, yeah. So I think I've answered your question, have I?
and how would you place received knowledge in the frame of homegrown knowledge? Because there is also something to say about the wisdom of something that is received, or something that is
so I think
passed
this
on.
it's very interesting. I've received the same question the second time within a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. The difference between that was on a Punjabi channel that I was on, and so the two knowledges, so to speak. One is a knowledge that comes from, just that we say, I have to kind of switch to, like, Sufiyon ka silsila hai. Ye silsila sadiyon se chal raha hai. From the 12th century onwards, the Sufi poetry silsila is rolling, and it's being passed from one body to the other. It's like, what to say, Sina Basina, from one body to the other. It has been following. So that is one continuum that we were talking about. So that is also received knowledge, but that is received knowledge which keeps getting distilled, or which keeps getting lived and relived and retested, so to speak, through every generation. That is one knowledge. On the other hand, there are these knowledges of, so this knowledge is homegrown. It is of and in the body. This knowledge that I'm talking about, the silsila that I'm talking about, that passes from one body to the other. The other is the passing of ideas. So of course, I'm dividing the idea and materiality and idealism. Materialism and idealism. So the Sufi silsila is a silsila of materialism. It is material. But the idea is that, men are better than, men are superior to women. That's an idea. Black people don't matter. It's an idea. Homosexuality is a crime. It's an idea. Sex is bad. It is an idea. Oranges are bad. Apples are good. It's an idea. And these become home truths and get passed in the same manner from one tradition to the other, from one generation to the other. And they are wrapped in kind of vagueness and just this thing that, this is how it is. Hamare yahan aisa hi hota hai. This is how we are. There is no, so there you just have to kind of digest it lump sum without, you can't break it up. It's not biodegradable. It's a foreign, unbiodegradable idea, because it has no roots. It has no integrity. It has no roots in reality. It is made up and it is forced upon you, and it is writ as God's truth. And of course, it is all of them, all these things are kind of rooted in the idea of God, which you can't challenge. So when they say critique, so to critique, and critique ideas like this, critique at any point, anywhere, is essentially the critique of the idea of God and religiosity. Deep down at the root, it is the idea critiquing requires challenging the received knowledge about morality, religiosity, and God. So there are two streams. One stream is coming as a lived reality, and the other is coming as a constructed certitude of correctness. So there is no correctness when it comes to a silsila. This is right, this is wrong. Whatever feels right is right, man, as opposed to wrong and right. So to allow one continuum and stand in it and for it and maybe fight for it. And on the other hand, challenge all those ideas which don't sound right, which are like a thorn in your consciousness. And they are, because all these ideas are somehow, somewhere unjust. And a body cannot digest injustice. It will stay within the body like a thorn. And it will keep provoking me or reacting or something, but it will stay like a foreign body inside my body. And if it is, but the thing is, I have to be permitted. I have to be permitted to recognize it, identify it, challenge it, and raise a voice for it. That is where the permission comes in. That, yeah, yes. I don't buy it. It doesn't sound right.
Silsila is such a beautiful word and such an apt word.
Absolutely.
This continuum. And it's taking me back to the first thing you said about the division, like what happened to dance and yoga over the years, that it almost feels like it became a repository of these ideas that you're talking about. And that actually perhaps what these are continuums, they are silsilas,
absolutely,
that they move in and out of bodies and shape-shift as they have to and move. Whereas these handed down ideas ask you to be regimented, to be disciplined in these ways, to be, and therefore this changing of the bodies that walk into the class, once we sort of say no, we get rid of the regiment and we try and start a silsila, a continuum, which people occupy as they do. But it's also a conundrum in a sense, because ideas are currency, in the world that we live in. Thought and thinking. One of the things you also say is that your belief is that yoga is the practice is basically breaking the continuous loop of thinking or the thought. But it is also this thinking and this thought, the ability to think thoughts and the ability to have ideas that, for example, is making us sit here and have this conversation. And we employ language for a practice that has got nothing to do with language. So there is also, I feel sometimes a sitting contradiction in it. That becomes it's a tussle, it's a tension between.
Right.
Andar hi andar ek ladai hai.
Right. I think I just want to correct one thing. When you say that there's no relationship between language and the body, I will disagree with that. There is an inherent and an intimate relationship between word and body. On one hand, the body exceeds the word, because the experience that I have the words cannot capture it. But on the other hand, so this is the beauty of it. So on one hand, the body exceeds the word. But on the other hand, the word can re-evoke and recall and reignite that experience through suggestion. So on one hand, the I'm going to repeat. On one hand, the body exceeds the word. On the other hand, the word is a repository of this excess. Because it's the word that awakens something in me. Even though what it awakens exceeds the word, but it's the word that has suddenly, like this is why language, if people come to my classes, my language plays such an important role in the way I teach. Because evocation, suggestion, one of the last, I teach verbs, and the S, one of the last S things that S stands for is suggestion. There is no embodied practice without suggestion, because there are areas, there are dimensions that I go into that I cannot walk into rationally. And I should not, so I have to drop that rationality and go into the realm of poetics almost, where I drop a word and lo and behold, you get goosebumps. So this relationship between the word and the body is incredibly intimate. It's twined, and so it's like one of those things you can't really say what is better or what comes first. It's like a chicken and egg thing. It's that intimate relationship. And there was one more thing I was going to say, which and why is word or ideas or thinking so important? Because it is not just experiencing. Like I said, it's not just experiencing. It isn't enough for me to have a feel-good experience. But within that very fertile ground of feeling good, it's a very fertile place. But I don't quite know how to farm that fertility or farm out of that fertileness. So to drop a question in that now, and suppose the question, like, where do I take this sense of spaciousness? Where do I, so that is an inquiry. And the word is vichar. Tumhe vichar karna padta hai. So vichar or inquiry further in a way complicates the equation and actually distills the equation. It's a like I keep saying that, you know, the yoga that I'm challenging and I'm rejecting is the yoga of perfectionism. So we are trying to perfect ourselves through these practices. We are going to become physically perfect and morally perfect by these practices. My yoga, which I call Babs, is a practice of distillation. It's like from gross to subtle. It's a percolation. It's at the end of it, I just want to be left with something that I can't even name, but I can only suggest. And I know it's that excess that we're talking about. So idea is what makes me recall the experience, reorganize the experience. You see, these experiences are to be reorganized. They have to be remembered, reorganized, re-evoked, because I'm talking of practice. I'm not talking of an accidental experience. I'm talking of a practice where the experience has to be reorchestrated, has to be replicated. And that replication happens with an organization of words, with the construction of words, with the choice of words. In fact, it is retained through words. But how else do I remember something? With word. And it's the way I will restructure those words that I'll be able to slip back into that experience. I'll be able to reclaim that experience, revisit that experience. So to think, I mean, to inquire. Inquiry that's another thing that is central to my practice. And that's to my, not only to my practice, I feel that inquiry is central to Yoga Sutras. And I don't know anybody except my teacher, Dechikachar, who talks about inquiry. They talk of all the niyamas, ahimsa, brahmacharya, this, that, or the other. But nobody talks about vichar. Whereas there are 7 sutras on vichar in the first chapter, and only 1.5 sutras on asana. And we are kind of going crazy over asana. We are going crazy about, you know, brahmacharya and ahimsa and this one and yama, niyama. But nobody talks about vichar or inquiry. So it's an inquiry-based practice. And inquiry is critical to embodied, to the distillation of embodied practice. Critical. Because I can only use words to remember, to recall, reorganize, and replicate.
And I guess maybe that is also what we are relying in the digital space a lot.
Absolutely.
It's the reason
Absolutely.
we are able to extend ourselves to this space.
And it's also a reason that I have been able to teach the way I've been teaching effectively online. There was a time I thought it would be a joke to teach online, but how could you teach yoga online? But I feel that it's almost the same, because it's, as long as my voice carries, that's all it, because it's not about, seeing, oh, you lifted your leg wrong, or you twisted wrong, or this right. It's not about adjustments. It's about providing suggestion and giving you the permission to make your mistakes or find your way. So yes, I think this thing about words is very important, and also is allowing classes online. And I just want to say, this is the last thing, that I'm going to start a teachers training course very soon, and the last module is only about language. In teaching, it's a yoga teachers training, and the last module is language. That's how important language is, or words are, or the choice of words are, when it comes to teaching, or when it comes to body and practice.
The power of this thing that you're talking about, the power of suggestion and the permission to make mistake, to falter. I think this is entirely absent generally there is no permission to falter. There is no permission to do it wrong. And I think this extends across. This is not even, I'm not here talking about, it is in our student classrooms, it is in our everywhere, it is in pedagogy, it's in the arts when we stand on stage. It is as if and to think that, and as a choreographer and dancer, you will really resonate, I think, with this. To stand on stage and feel like you can't be wrong, or they can't be a mistake, or you can't falter, is kind of trying to sanitize this human experience in a way that, how can it be?
Right.
How can it be?
Yeah.
And this is also about permission.
Yeah. I've actually, like, this is again an example of words. I've made it a mantra. This is the mantra that I share with my students, that it is my body, and it is my practice, and it will be my judgments. And my teacher, Mallika Taneja's father, used to say, I make rules and I break rules. So I feel that I'm in the lineage of permission. Mallika Taneja gave me permission, his father gave him permission, and all of us permission. So it's a lineage. But of course, it depends on whether you follow that lineage or you don't. And the reason that we don't want to follow that, we don't want to give permission, is because we want to render these disciplines precious. They're too precious. So you've got to be, you can't make mistakes. And the thing is that they're not precious. They are as ordinary or as special as my body and as I am.
Before we open up to questions, I just wanted to completely change track and ask you, Navtej, do you ever truly find rest?
Okay, so are you saying, do you find rest or do you find sukh?
Rest and then sukh.
Yeah, sukh, yes. Rest, not as easily, and these days even less and less. In the sense that I love what I do. I absolutely passionately love what I do. So I could be faulted to be not alcoholic, workaholic. I knew there was something. I'm also dyslexic, by the way. So workaholic, because I get so excited about so many things, and I'm excited about multiple things all the time. So rest, I'm yes and no, but sukh, plenty. Because sukh is an island that you come upon or you orchestrate. I think just allowing yourself the permission to stop and to cherish and to just take a nice big taste of something is sukh. And it requires two things. It requires a permission, and two, requires your ability to recognize that this is the moment. Because we have been conditioned to continuously dismiss things that really matter to us, things that will make me feel nice. I just dismiss them. This is not important. But to recognize that moment, identify that moment, halt in that moment, and cherish that moment, even though it might be a short moment, a fleeting moment, or maybe a long moment, might be a life-changing moment. But when it comes to rest, as in taking, like I hate taking holidays. I'm a nervous wreck on holidays. But I do take holidays, but I'm not. So that kind of rest is not my students keep telling me that you're a hypocrite. You keep telling us you talk of rest and you don't rest. So yes, rest is rest. Yes, rest comes at a premium today, major premium. So I'm not satisfied enough yet to rest.
But I mean, since I started to think about rest and resting, I was thinking also, rest is not a holiday, actually.
Yeah, rest is neither a holiday, nor is it the absence of work. You see, this is how we imagine it. Rest is an absence of work.
Exactly. Both these things. That actually, what we are trying to say, that it's not. I feel similarly about the arts. Like it's not an event, it's not an occasion, right. It's a way of life.
Absolutely.
Like rest, which is what you're saying.
It's a culmination.
It's a silsila.
Yeah. And rest requires work. You see, sukh requires work. It's a calibration of things that will bring me. I won't feel sukh. Like if I just lie down, I won't go into shavasana. In order for me to go into the juice of shavasana, I have to do lots of stuff. I have to break into a sweat in order to feel that pleasure of shavasana and that sukh of shavasana. So it requires work, and not just work, but very finely calibrated work.
Yeah.
So rest requires work.
Yeah. I was speaking with members of Surabhi Theatre who are also part of our doll making session, and when asking them rest, and rest is such a contextual thing as well, because they were saying that 1 week we don't do any work, it is technically rest, but it is not restful. But when we do shows, when we set up our theater, when we perform, and at the end of that there is rest, and I think what he's trying to say is there's sukh.
Absolutely.
There is a completion, there is a pleasure, which leads to a really good night's sleep also.
Absolutely.
Also, we also speak of rest in privileged ways. Rest is also a privilege.
Right.
Which I think one needs to also be conscious of when we speak about things like rest, and who gets to rest, and who continues to struggle, and on whose shoulder does somebody rest. And I think when I think of vacations, I feel like somebody is working for my rest, so right. Maybe in the large scheme of sense, the rest didn't happen. There is a question which I'd like to just say. Would it be fair to say that it's the problem in ideas which causes the thorn in the body-based practices? It is what is causing the tussles.
Sorry, is it the ideas? Sorry, what is the first?
Would it be would it be fair to say that it's the problem in ideas which causes the thorn in the body-based practices? It is what
Yeah.
is
Okay.
causing the
Okay.
tussles.
Okay. So we can't make a blanket statement like that, because ideas can be just and ideas can be unjust. I think justice, that feel of justness, of fairness, plays a very important. Like what niggles is when I feel that something is not fair. You see, when something is fair, there's a completion to it. It balances out. It doesn't leave any residue, so to speak. But when things are not fair, it leaves a niggling feeling of suspicion, doubt, not sureness, wrongness, coercion, whatever. And that becomes a niggling feeling, and it niggles both parties, one who is being wronged and one who is wronging. Both parties feel that niggle, and one wants to challenge it and one wants to capitalize on it. So, so I would not just say that it's ideas, but ideas that are uh, supremacist in some kind. And when I say supremacy, I mean supremacist to the point of where ideas that consider idea to be supreme, that consider mind to be over body. I mean, it's basically, it boils down to that idea. So ideas of superiority, because that is an idea. That one thing is superior to the other is an idea. That mind is superior to the body is an idea. Man is superior to woman is an idea. White is superior to black is an idea. So these ideas, of which are ideas related to superiority and thus power, are ideas that cannot spawn thorns, cannot not spawn thorns. They have to, because superiority is, I mean, claimed superiority, self-claimed superiority is, you can call it delusion, you can call it an idea, you can call it a lie, you can call it a fabrication, but yeah, so it's the injustice of an idea, or the inequality in the idea, that is the thorn, the inequality, not the idea itself, because ideas we need. I mean, we build on ideas, concepts which are, or when we inquire, we ideate, we construct thoughts into ideas. Insights can also be, can be ideas, or dharanas, as they say in Yoga Sutras, are ideas. They are assumptions or postulations. So mathematics is based on the postulation of a zero. It's an idea, and yet it is so real. It is so palpably real. But that man is superior to woman is not palpably real. That white is superior to black is not palpably real. It is a forced construct.
We are kind of at the end of our session. So if anybody has any last questions, please do post them in the chat box. I wanted to ask Navtej, justice and injustice is I mean, how there is so much of injustice that is around us now. And there is such a deep lack of justice that I wonder sometimes that how will we ever recover from where we have landed ourselves in right now? Such a deep, dark hole.
Yeah, I know, that is despairing, really. I think that's also maybe one reason where we can't allow ourselves to rest.
Yeah.
I think that's also a fact. We are up against such cruel injustice that even though I pleasure in my sense of rest and sukh, I can't allow myself because um, we are up against something very violent, very mean, full of lies. So yeah, I agree, Mallika. I'm sorry.
There's another.
It's yeah. Go ahead.
No, actually, the thing is that we are all churning together in it. It's
Yeah.
a real. It feels like we're going round and round in a washing machine right now.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a while, and I hope that this. I think in a sense, practice on the daily is some sort of a pushback in the face of it,
Right.
as a certain. We have two more questions which I'll go into.
Can you also give me the names, please?
Yeah, Vivek Sharma is asking, is the practice of yoga you mentioned revolves around the idea of mindfulness and being present / aware in the moment or beyond that?
You see, mindfulness has become something else now. The yoga that we practice, according to my teacher, I won't even say what I mean. So my grand guru, Krishnamacharya, says that that if the body, breath, and mind are not working in tandem, it is not yoga. So the body, breath, and mind have to work in tandem. Only then does it qualify to be yoga. And my teacher, who's a non-believer, who categorically told his father, a very orthodox Iyengar father, he told his father to teach him yoga, but keep God out. So a Desikachar who does yoga with God out says that yoga is when body, mind, breath, and something more is working in tandem. Something more, excess, nameless. Because we are dealing, the thing is that we are in the presence of excess. I'm getting goosebumps as I say this. We are in the presence of excess when we are practicing. And excess has been kind of almost like shown off, when the way they teach with such certitude, because certitude is the enemy of excess. When you're doing something with such certitude and such earnestness and such sense of virtue and morality, you're completely bereft of excess because you're standing in correctness. Correctness is so mean and so violent to excess. But when you're standing in the moment, but in the moment of very casually in the moment, not earnestly in the moment, in a sense of openness, like moving through space and time and brushing excess or being in touch with excess. So so that's what my practice is: body, mind, breath, and something else, something more. I hope I've answered the question.
There's another question, but before that, just that this something more is such a juicy proposition.
So beautiful.
It's such a juicy suggestion.
Yeah.
And it's just
and to
something
stop short
more.
of calling it something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop.
Yeah,
and this
exactly.
is, by the way, Sankhya. This is exactly what Sankhya is. It stops short of naming anything.
Yeah.
But suggesting, yes, why not?
Yeah. There's another question by Ashwini Pawar. They're asking, in your experience as a classical dancer, when you perform preset choreographed compositions, does the BAPS method fit into these set choreographies, or did you have to walk away from them and only found sukh in your own choreographies?
Very simple. I only found sukh in my own choreographies. As long as it was work doing the set choreography, to me, it is non-dance. It is like goes against the idea of like definition of dance for me. And I'll just tell you that I started dance and yoga within the same week. And it took me like 10 years to own my body in dance. And I owned my body in yoga on day one. And that is the conflict that I lived with. People would say, oh, how lovely, you're so lucky you're doing dance and yoga together. Yoga is so compatible to dance. And I would say, not at all. It is at loggerheads. They're like, one is introvert and one is extrovert. One is open, one is fixed. One is fluid and one is rigid. So it was only when I started to make my own choreographies, and even in my own choreographies, I improvise on stage. And so only then did I begin to own my body and my dance, and they became pleasurable for me in the way I would like it. So thank you for that question.
And thank you, Navtej, for speaking with us today. It's almost time, and for anybody who hasn't registered for the classes that are happening as part of Recover, Chapter 1 of Rest of the Struggle. I always crack up a little bit in my head when I say that, Recover, Chapter 1 of Rest of the Struggle. The link is in the chat box here. A recording of this talk will be available on the SPIELART website and SPIELART YouTube for anybody who wants to listen to it later. Thank you, everybody, for joining, listening, asking questions. Thank you, Navtej, for taking out the time, for speaking to me here, to answering questions. And thank you very much for your very lovely, empowering practice that we all are participating in every morning.
Thank you, Mallika. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, SPIELART. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Actually, it's a pleasure to teach in the mornings. Actually, yeah. So thank you.
I just want to say that there is still 2 more weeks of the project unfolding in the digital space. There's all sorts of things on offer. Please check it out. There are more. There are performances. There's yoga. There's doll making. There is Bindu Malini who sings every night, and there is a morning broadcast Telegram channel that you can get onto. Please join, participate, pass it on. It's all free. Tell your friends and family and your networks, and we'll be really happy to see more and more and more of you. So on that plug, I thank you again, and good night, everyone.
Bye.